And we're starting with a very antique beginning. This predates every knob what was shown here before. This is like, it goes about records and how records developed into electronic music. And we're starting very early, like in the very early 70s in the Bronx. Um, one of the first ancestor rulers in this case as a DJ was DJ Kool Herc. Kool Herc was a guy, he immigrated to the Bronx in New York in the 60s and tried to bring the sound systems of the Jamaican sound system culture, he tried to brought that into the Bronx. The problem was the people in the Bronx at those times, it was like 1970, 1971 too, they didn't want to listen to reggae at all. They were like at a fancy place, they'd like to be like the rich dudes at Studio 54, like the disco tunes. But the problem was the Bronx guys couldn't handle to catch up with the Manhattan disco clubs at this time at all. They didn't just get in. So they made their own parties. Which means he had to play similar but not the same sound, because disco was for the rich and fancy guys in Manhattan. What he did, he played a lot of James Brown, the funk stuff of this era. What he also did was like, he found out actually that the people liked the little part, normally at old funk, soul, rock records at those times, were like little parts where the drummer get alone, which is the breakdown part, where it's just the drums alone running. And this is what he found out, that he could separate this just with the turntables. He put like just this little parts, he rewinded it to the next one and looped it just by hand. The point was, we all thinking like nowadays terms. It was pre-internet, pre-iPad, pre-everything. So the thing, there was even pre-for-listening, which means there was the technique called needle dropping. And needle dropping was really like they dropped the needle back and hoped that it catch the first bar of this loop inside of this LP or 12-inch, which is pretty crazy. So he started to do this really like block parties. Like people went out to the park and built up their own setup with 9060 built turntables, old amplifiers. They put all the stuff there. And the winner mainly was who had the loudest sound system. So it was expensive to have a loud sound system, of course, at this time with no money in the Bronx. And those people, when the party was over, the neighbors came, they did a party at a park or in recreational rooms. And when they went back, the DJ had to brought all this fucking sound system stuff and all the records back, and he could be lucky if his friends were not drunk enough to help him. But to tell him like a little feeling of the sounds what he used to, like at this time records were different handled. Nowadays everything is like internet, you can catch everything out of the net. Back in the days it was like you found a specific record, a specific break that turned out into your break. It's like you were known for this break as a DJ. And it was the competition was to hold this break that long enough for the competitors that they can spin this, which handed out in the end like people went into the bath tube and washing the labels off or just writing over it. So in one of the breaks, it really took like at least 1-2 years that he had found and was later on until today called the official anthem of the Bronx and hip-hop, was Apache, but Incredible Bongo Band, and that's what he did. He did the merry-go-round. He called it the merry-go-round, which was like basically needle dropping, the skip back the part of the beginning break of this record. Later on, when it was more professionalized, it came on with, like it was really actually a backspin, what I want to show you easily. Nothing coming, wait. We're coming in. Okay, where's it? It's not here. No, it's coming. So that's actually Apache. And he just looped that. And turning back. That's already too much with the scratching. He didn't did it. But that's basically the first times were like sampled loops in this case. Analog by a record. it's already too much what I'm doing. They did really like needle skipping it back and try to catch the beat, which is pretty crazy. You have to think about that. At those times, also the breakdancers, the b-boys, evaluated of that, because when this came on, like the part where the people just get down to the break, it was crazy. And then all the b-boys went into the circle and then made their moves. And then think about if it's not tight on time and still the people dance to it. It must be a pretty crazy time to be actually saying it. But the first apprentices, like the new breed already stood in the first line. And I stood in the first line and watching him and recreating and then getting on the next level of that. One of the first guys who did it was like Africa Bambaataa. Africa Bambaataa was like an original gang leader from the Black Spades from the Bronx. The Black Spades were like the biggest street gang, really like tough street gang, like really violent crime gang in the Bronx. But he was one of the leaders, like the war leaders. They had different sectors, and he was one of the war leaders for the South Bronx. And he at one time his best friend was shot, and then he re-fought his whole living, and he formed a Zulu nation out of that to make it a peaceful thing, to put hip hop together, to put like different elements like graffiti at this time, and the b-boying and the turntablism, in this case DJing, just together under one roof, and formed like, instead of fighting with the knives and with the guns, to do battles. The whole hip hop thing is a battle culture actually, and it's coming from the street gangs from back in the days, from the 60s and 70s in New York. So that's Africa Bambaataa. He's still touring till today. He got several images. That's one of the 80s. And in the 90s, he was more colorful. But still, he's like still like one of the biggest leaders in hip hop nowadays. He got really big following with the Zulu Nation. Every time when you go to Africa Bambaataa's show, if he's spinning, there's at least a dozen of Zulu Nation heads there who's protecting him, just because of the feeling of what he done back in the days. Another one, but he was like the master of the records. That was a special thing. He had like a crazy record collection with different kind of genres. So that brought the multi-genres into it. So hip-hop in the beginning was totally multi-genre. It was made of rock, of disco, of calypso, reggae, of everything what's happening at this time. He put everything together at one party and brought together that something happened. That made his big name also. Not just the Zulu Nation thing is one thing, but also that he was really good, like putting totally crazy UK rock song, prog rock songs, and the reggae and the calypso stuff together in one party, and people getting down to a hip-hop kind of vibe. What we know today is from like b-boy battles, for example. And then there was another one who came out of this era. That's like the Holy Trinity of hip-hop DJs in this case. It's Grandmaster Flash. Everybody knows Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five's The Message, and New York, and all those records. That came a bit later. I mean, they started early, of course. But he also was in the early days of the block parties. And what Flash did was he was a technician. He was the first guy who really put it on a technical level. When Kool Herc and Bambaataa was just like, needle dropping and playing the tunes, he was actually working with the tunes. He really was like putting new techniques in, like punch phrasing and the clock system. For example, we have like can I show it on here on the record? We have like, is there a camera? All right. I, for example, got this marker here on the record, right? And you know that it's starting there. You see it like a clock system. And it's starting on a 1 now. And that's a system what Grandmaster Flash, for example, invented. He also clarified that he invented the pre-listening thing on a mixer, but that's not completely true. He just saw it on some Manhattan DJs and then rebuilt his own. But like I said, in the Bronx, there was no money at all. They had nothing. They really had to build everything on their own. That's what makes hip-hop until today, that it's a self-made generation, it's a self-made culture. And what he did was a punch phrasing, for example, getting in with the... Stuff he already did, like it's just really simple. Just getting in with the really simple steps. So Flash was our dad, and also he created a lot of body tricks, which were like also kind of new because, like I said, the people normally, for example, there was at the same time happening in New York. New York was at this time really like a lot of crazy new stuff coming out. The new wave scene, like CBGBs, the punk scene came out, and all. And there was also like this disco scene, but there was also an underground disco scene, like Larry Levin and Dave Mancuso. And Dave Mancuso, for example, his mentality was we let the record play from the very first till the very end, beginning, end, and no mixing in between, and then the next record starting. And that was a totally different approach to it, what he did. He did quick mixing, he did like body tricks, like behind his back, with his feet, with his chin, with everything. Like, that's how the MC also actually started, because he made so much stuff that people wasn't dancing at all anymore, because they just wanted to see what he's doing. And then Melly Mel and all those guys came in and hosted for him. That's how the MC came up, just for the record. So we have to do this. But now actually, you're all asking, it's a history of turntablism, where does the scratch actually come in? Those guys already doing back tricks, everything. It was actually the younger brother of Grandmaster Flex's DJ partner, Mean Gene. His name, Grand Wizard Theodore. And he was accidentally the inventor of the scratch. Accidentally, there is this typical child room story from Theodore itself. He was at his house with he was in a room of his brother, at least, and he practiced when his brother was out to work. So he wasn't allowed to touch the turntables at all, but he always did. He was young, he was like maybe like 13, 14 at this time. And he did, he practiced the same shit. You know, he did like the backspins and all that stuff. And then the mother accidentally came in and said like, what the hell? It's too loud, shut that shit down. He was like, okay, mom. And he had in his headphones, wait, now we're going to the scratch things. I have to recreate that. And his mom told him to shut up with that stuff. So he had in the back, in his headphones, because he was holding the record, he had like, he heard something like this. And then he thought about, maybe I can create more out of that. And then he was the first, he was very young. I mean, the others were at this time maybe like 18, 19, 20. And then he was with 14. He went into this block party. Well, there's a lot of criminals around still, gangs and all that. It was not an environment for young kids in this case, or like a youth. But he was tough enough. He had his bigger brother with him and all that. And he started to show them, okay, now I found out something. So that's actually what he basically did. It was really, really, really simple scratching. But at this time, it was so way ahead for everybody. Nobody ever seen everybody doing anything crazier like this on a turntable. Before, it was just skipping it back and looping the records. But now it was like really using the record, scrubbing over it, like destroying the needles and the record. Nobody could understand, but it was something new. Nobody ever did before. And it was totally different for the people. It was a revolution in this case for the block parties in the Bronx. I want to just loop that shit. Where's the loop? Oh, right here. For the next ones. So now we come to some early scratch techniques. That's oh wait, it's the second one. All right. Some early scratch techniques that happened at this time. It was, of course, the 16th. Yeah, I mean, basically it's really easy stuff. It's a baby scratch, of course. It's just forward, backward. It's like everybody can do. The only thing is to have it like clean and tight. That's the only difference. That's actually the baby scratch. That's what Grand Wizard Theodore invented. And the thing is that the next one came the forward and the step. The forward is maybe just like the punch phrasing from Grandmaster Flash. And the steps is more like a pushing forward kind of version of the forward. So that's basically the forward, and the step is like. So it's very simple, basic scratching, but that's what happened later. So, and from that on, the first combinations happened, for example, the military scratch. And that must be also timed about 1974, 1975. So we're talking about really vintage stuff now. So that's really like the basics of scratching, what happened at those times. The next generation already said, it's always like that, the next one always waiting to come out and be competitive with this. Like I said, it's a competitive culture, it's all coming from the hip-hop, from way back from the gangs. You always have to remember where it's coming from and where it's going to. It's always kind of like one goes to the other, right? One of the things that always, in my opinion at least, changed the minds and developed a lot was like championships, like official championships. And the very first DJ championship that happened in this case, like you can say that's the very first, and it's still holding till today, is Disco Mix Club World Championships. Disco Mix Club was found in '85, or maybe a bit earlier, I guess, but still '85, the first World Championships happened at their place in the UK, in London. And they are still the basics till today. They did like, they had in the very first year, '85, there was Roger Johnson from the UK, he won, but that was more like just really mixing records. It was like the stuff that happened at this time, and he was mixing it together and won with that. It was getting more interesting in '86 when DJ Shees from the US came over and started scratching backspinning with all that. And even the UK DJs were mourning about like, yeah, what is it, a scratch or a mix championship? So from then on, it was a scratch championship in this case. And the DMCs still until today, we will go back later on DMCs because there's a lot of people like made their careers on and a lot of developments happened through this time. Almost at the same time was also the NMS Superman Battle for World Supremacy, which is a new music seminar, which is like a music fair, which I think still holding till today. Or maybe like now it's a WMC now in Miami, but it's kind of like the same thing, a music fair where like people from the music industry meeting and an artist. And they brought to a DJ crew surrounded by DJ Clark Kent called the Superman. They gave them also like the possibility to holding a DJ battle, like a world championship. Mainly was, of course, US people. Because nobody was, everything was smaller, there was not much information flowing around over the planet. It's not like today. So a lot of classic DJs we know today won this, like Jazz Jeff, Cash Money, Mixmaster Mike, all those guys won that stuff. Which comes to the new breed. There's like, people evolve with that stuff. They put like new scratch techniques on. From different cities. It wasn't always just New York. I mean, it started really early and it stayed along a while there. But also, of course, especially in the US, was a lot of people on the West Coast recognizing it, from Philadelphia, from Miami. Especially Philadelphia had always a huge DJ scene, a huge and a really professional DJ scene. And let's see, oh, you already on that one. You had the DMCs with Cash Money. Okay, that's DJ Cash Money. The difference with him is like he brought the new styles and a completely new technique that totally developed for everybody at this time. He won the DMCs in 1988. The point was, before him, everybody had a mixer this size. This size with cables hanging out like this. It's amazing. If you see old videos, it's such a fucking big mixer. And they had the crossfader way out on the side. And that's where they did body tricks and the back spinning and scratching, everything with it. What Cash Money did, besides his techniques, what I'm coming now in with the new techniques he also invented, was also that he come with that small mixer, which was called the Gemini MX 2200, which was a small mixer made for home mixing. It was on a packaging, it was like CD ready and stuff like that. It was a lot of different times. So what he did, he bought a small mixer, which made him way more freedom on the turntables to make body tricks. And of course, the one thing on this mixer was that the crossfader was the opening time was very short. Normally you had the crossfader on a mixer, so in the middle is the full sound until you're just going up and going down. But he had a really short cut. That was the totally difference, or he could do scratch techniques nobody else could do at this time. So now we're coming to okay. And now we come to transformer scratch. That's one of the very early scratches. Is back nominated to 83. I mean, the whole thing with the scratching techniques is like always lots of people saying they invented it. You never know exactly who exactly invented it. For the transformer scratch, it's a very good example. I have 4 names here. 4 different names and 2 different stories, kind of. So, Kubert said it was a guy like Lightning Rich. I never heard from him before. I know the story about the Spinbet from Philadelphia who tried it out first. Then Cashmani was the first to put it on a record, and Jazzy Jeff put it next on a record with a name to it. It's pretty hard to say. But yeah, it's a transformer scratch. It's to be said, it's the first one here on Scratching to the Funk. It's basically the names coming from the Transformers. Like you all know the movies Transformers, but there was also, of course, a cartoon comic series back in the days, and that's where the name, because of this Transformer noises or voices they had, and that's, yeah. It's pretty easy, just clicking in between. That's a Transformer scratch. It sounds like Transformers in this case. That's what they wanted to tell us with that. And that was still till today a popular scratch, but it's still one of the really, really early scratches. And what about that? Okay. The next one is like a chirp scratch. Chirp is also a really early scratch. He was invented, I heard it a lot of times, by the guy on the left side. I think everybody knows who's the guy on the right side. And they're going on tour next year again. It's actually DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. And Jazzy Jeff claiming that he invented the chirp, even when it was like in 1983 for Mixmaster Mike, leader of the pack, first time on the record. The chirp is pretty, like, how can I say? It's like everybody loves the scratch till today because it's always sounding good. It's kind of easy to do. It's one step forward. And one, you're holding it, and then you open it again, and holding back. So that's basically the chirp, which claimed to be invented by Jazzy Jeff. Not the Fresh Prince. The Jeff Prince was rapping over it. So Jazzy Jeff still touring constantly, and he's an all-around good dude. And yeah, he's definitely one of our heroes for back in the days. Because one thing you also have to rethink about: pre-internet times means. There was there was not importing stuff from the US too much. There were maybe people who had like 1 year high school study year and brought stuff back or had family or whatnot, but not everybody had it. Most people didn't have that. The point is that in the beginning, those scratches that I showed already, you were learning from listening to the records who were there happening. If somebody's scratching on you, try to redo it. A short time after, let's say 87, 88, 89, now it's coming with video cassettes from the competitions to see actually how people doing it, some stuff and new ideas and all that. So there was a time, nowadays, YouTube, bang, everything there. Back in the time, you have to listening and recreating. That's how unique styles came on. in the UK, for example, the people were really, really creative in their own style. There was, for example, drills. Drills, no, that's one of the one of the very few not US inventions. The drill is coming from mainly, to be said, I don't have a photo. It's sometimes pretty tough to find old photos from old guys on the internet. It's not there. It's still Jazzy Jeff. But whatever. What's coming next? Okay, that was the leader of the pack thing. That's coming next. Let's do this. The drill is like a scratch, I think, invented by, I think it's always a lot of people involved in inventing stuff. But it's to be said, from DJ Supreme and Undercover from the hardcore group, hardcore underground rap group Hijack. And it's basically your potential on your underarm. Yeah, there are some masters for it. I'm not the biggest master, but that's really an old school technique. Most people who started with turntablism, like end of the 90s, for example, don't know about the drill. I mean, they know, but they never practice because it's really tough to learn and to put it into more modern sets. It's like really an old school technique. But back in the days, there were like really crazy masters. Even like in Germany, we had DJ Stylus. He was really a master of the drill, definitely. Then there's like predating, I see here, word cuts. I mean, word cuts is for me different, Alex, than you think what word cuts is. The point is, word cuts for me was always the battle stuff that you put together to get against your opponent on championships. But the word cuts described in your manual, all that, is more like forwards and steps, kind of. Let's say transformer forwards combinations. But yeah, of course, I mean, like they have words that you're using.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's word cards that were very popular and made even more popular for DJ Premier, for example, later in the 90s. You know, FTC is always still a lot of Philadelphia and East Coast, New York based, but of course, on the West Coast, there were people professional at this time too. They came later, of course, but they were there and they worked hard on it. And there were a lot of inventions from the West Coast. Later on, in the turntablism era, the West Coast was the ruling part of the world. Talking about West Coast USA, talking about Oakland, Bay Area, San Francisco, Dale City. But we come later to those guys, but still there's some stuff they already had in. We see the one guy here, which is Mixmaster Mike. He definitely is a pioneer on his plateau. He later became really famous as a DJ from the Beastie Boys, but he was like the founder of the Invisible Scratch Pickers with Qbert and Shortcut and D-Stars and the DJ Apollo. Before that, they were called different. They were in the DMCs, for example, in '92. They won the DMCs as Rocksteady DJs because they were part of the Rocksteady crew, the B-Boy crew from New York. They spread out in Universal chapters. What he invented was like, no, he wasn't maybe not inventing, but perfectionizing maybe, like tone scratching. Tone scratching is, yeah, like the name says, scratching with the tones. Where's the tone? There. From that point off, he began to invent his really own scratch, from the tone scratching, which, to be said, you heard on various mid-'80s, DJ tapes from the West Coast. But what he invented was a tweak scratch, which was actually a typical Mixmaster Mike scratch. You're putting motor off and doing the tone scratching with it. Yeah, that's a typical invention from Mixmaster Mike. Also very popular from this times. We talking still like mid and 80s was like the tear scratch, and then later on from that coming from there coming like the jockey scratch. Jockey was like, oh, we have a photo for him. Let's put it like, okay. Just so people see what looked at this time. So I mean, it was. Oh shit! Okay. Yep. Always. Oh, I even forgot about this. That's the thing. We have to go back then. That's cool. What? No, wait. There. That's Joe Cooley, the one on the right. The rest is Ronnie O. And yeah, they were from Miami, I guess. It was Miami. They are. But the point is that the Tears is like a really, really popular scratch until today. And there's a lot of combinations with the later coming up flare scratch. What the Tear scratch is like, the basic is 1 forward, 2 backward. Oops. And Joe Cooley put it together with the chirp. So I think that's one of the most famous scratches people in Europe learned during this era. Yeah, there's also lasers. I think lasers, I don't know. Nobody knows where lasers coming from, but maybe West Coast again. Oh, that's complicated already. Oh. Yeah, it's pretty complicated now. The fucking lasers. Lasers is pretty tough, kind of old school stuff. The one thing that's also really important to see is like there was one DJ, like an old school DJ, who was already there. Oops. And that's this guy. And he was one of the reasons a lot of people started basically DJing and scratching in the US. Because this is Grandmaster DST, nowadays called Grand Mixer DST. And he was like, he was the DJ of Herbie Hancock in '83. And everybody knows the song where he was performing on. Where's the song? There. So the point is, everybody knows the song. Everybody. So Herbie Hancock was that visionary that he put a DJ in at this time. We're talking '83. The point was, the song was nominated for the Grammys. I think it wasn't winning it, but it was at least nominated, and it was performed at the Grammys in '83. So nationwide in the US, everybody saw a DJ scratching with a band together, and with electronic futuristic sounds, that was, a lot of people started with that. Cuba, everybody started with that at least. That changed a lot of things when stuff like that happened. But he was performing with him. So we're talking still like my opinion was like that. DMCs, like the championships, put it out new developments always, like every year. The other one tried to get over the next one. So in '96, there was coming like, because we have to see that there was a lot of things happening at the DMCs at this time. And that was the videos everybody saw and tried to do better. But there was a physical limit somehow. We had a German champion called David Fascher in 1990, 1991. He won 2 times in a row. It was the first time somebody won 2 times in a row. He was like, he was pretty fast with the backspins. He did a lot of body tricks, like under his leg and with his feet and everything. And in the second year, he won against Qbert even. It was the crazy part. He did a hand glide, which you put like as a b-boy breakdance move. You put your hand and then put your whole body on it, and I don't want to show you. But. So he did a breakdance move on a turntable. He won with that. At this time, the rules were changing for DMC. They said, okay, that's the physical edge. Nobody can change everything more, do more like this. And they did like, okay, let them teams in. Let up to 5 turntablists in, like 5 DJs, put in a DJ band and stuff like that. And that's when Qbert with Big Saucer Mike and Paulo came as a rocksteady years later and visited Scratch Pickets and took the title, completed 92, 93. They took the title too, just Mixmaster Mike and Qbert. And in 94, there was no DMC happening for whatever reasons. There's more. And in the end, they had to retire because DMC said if they entering, nobody would enter anymore. So they retired with the 94 thing. They did a showcase, which was pretty crazy still. And the next generation came. I mean, the generation was already there, but they had different style, different approach. The next generation was like, in this case, it was DJ Rock Raider from the X-Men. The X-Men were like an old DJ crew from New York. Raider itself came from Harlem. And he was like maybe even the youngest from the Superman, not Superman, X-Men crew, but I think, as I remember, was like the Superman parts of it split to the X-Men. So the point was that he was into beat juggling. Beat juggling is like the more developed version of the backspin. The backspin is just looping it, instead of the beat juggling is like really syncopating the beats to new styles. And he was like a master of it at this time. So he won like the, let's show some, you have to say that, like even Qbert said, like the beat juggling and the drum scratching predating scratching. Which means, because there was always beats going on, loopings and beats, and he did like not just Rock Raider, but before, like even Jam Master Jay from Run MC did like beat cuts. And then like some old school DJs did beat jugglings. And beat juggling is basically not just a loop, it's more like, putting some, there's a pretty easy one we're doing. Now it's off the loop. Tack. 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 Let's see, that's working. No, what's happening now? No, that's not cool. That's It's totally recreating the beats instead of just looping them. And that's what came out with the beat juggling. That's a typical invention from New York, you can say. That's still also like a tradition in New York to do lots of beat juggling. Instead of scratching, is more West Coast orientated in the US. And at the same time, around when he won, and then DJ Noise was winning against him on 96, and DMCs, but the DMCs were always like, a little bit like, how can I say, they were like, there's a lot of UK heads in, and then a lot of politics, and other people outside of the underground turntablism culture. So at this point, the manager from the X-Men and the manager from the Invisible Scratch Pickets from the West Coast, Alex Aquino, they put together this championship called ITF, International Turntablist Federation. The ITF were like totally underground. They just started in New York, one battle, one-on-one. Each one had 2 minutes. Next round, KO system, and a band showcase battle between Invisible Scratch Pickets and X-Men, which was like one of the most legendary scratch band battles ever in history. And Total Eclipse won this one against Baboon 96, and he went into the X-Men. So this started to a whole new movement because they had several categories, which is later now also known kind of like in the IDAs. They are like the after movement from the ITF. They had beat juggling as a solo category, they had scratching as a solo category, they had band as a solo category, and they had all-around one-on-one KO battle system. Which means that a lot of people went on to become mainly beat jugglers or mainly scratchers, or like even the band team. There were people who just one band, as like 4 or 3 people just practice as a band and never did their solo titles. Which totally, we see that the development goes in different directions at this time. That was also from Westex, the Extravaganza in Japan they did, and yeah. And then, but still, we have like Qbert on there. And Qbert's like, yeah, he's called the god of scratching. He's like absolutely extra talent, plus hardest working, so which makes a perfect combination for an alien. He's like, he invented a lot of scratches together with his bandmates, Mixmaster Mike, DJ Disc definitely. DJ Disc is a really big name for that stuff. And so one thing what he told us that he also invented was like fades and echoes, which is especially for people who are not that deep into scratching, but I had a lot of times with workshops with people coming, can you show me a little bit of scratching I can put in my normal sets? And like, yeah, it's a lot of practice still. But there's at least one scratch that is really easy that everybody can do at every kind of music, every kind of set, which is, in this case, it's fades. And fades is really easy. Let's put a beat to it, too. I'll put a fucking loop on again. Da. Fades is just pretty, you can do every kind of scratch with the fades. But I do now first with the baby scratches, if you see what I mean. Just do a baby scratch and just fading down a crossfader, the line fader. Of course, you can do this also with steps and with forwards. So fades and echoes, like one of the most popular things. You're always putting in details if you do like a scratch routine or all this. Yeah, there's also like from Mixmaster Mike comes the hydroplanes. Another thing that maybe not sounding that well. It depends. Hydroplanes, yeah, it's like you have to see it. It's hard to explain, but you definitely need a wet finger for that. That's crazy with a digital fidget, man. We should maybe doing it with. It's pretty tough to explain. But yeah, that's a hydroplane for Mixmaster Mike. But now comes like the revolution now for turntable itself in the mid of, actually it was invented in '87, but perfectionized just beginning of the '90s, and most people just really acknowledged and recognized it on a '94 showcase from Qbert Mixmaster Mike at the DMCs. So everybody tried to learn that afterwards, and that's now the standard basic scratch that was like the new transformer, you can tell it. It's the Flair scratch, invented by DJ Flair. Ah, here he is. So, and DJ Flair, you see, is like pretty nerdish, but it's a really nice dude. And he was also practicing with Qbert and all those guys on the West Coast. And accidentally, threw out a transformer, he found out the Flair scratch. And the Flair scratch itself is like, it was called back in the days illusion scratch, which means you're doing like a transformer, but instead of how you can explain? It's too tough to explain. But you have to click on different times. You click in it, you let it run 2 times with 1 click instead of the transformer, 2 clicks and 1 time running. It's a bit tough to explain, I know. The transformer would be like, instead of a flare, it's like. And from there coming there's like countless combinations of that scratch, like the orbit invented by DJ Disc with 2 clicks up front and 2 clicks back. and 2, 3 clicks, 1, 2 clicks, 2, 1 clicks, 1, 1. There's really a lot of combinations. So yeah, flash scratching is its own science, like especially with all those clicking. One of the most important scratch also coming from this era, to be said, there's a lot of hassle around who invented it, but I think it must be like Qbert and Digidisc together somehow. It's the crab scratch. And just put a camera on, it's better. For the crab scratch, you definitely have to see it. The crab scratch is like, you're putting your your fingers on a fader and but not just the one. You're clicking against the thumb with all the 3, sometimes 4, but mostly it's 3. It's coming from the twiddle, actually. The twiddle was this, just 2. And then they made it with the 3, which is a very typical sound. I hate those things. It's like, okay. So yeah, that's a crab scratch actually. How much time do you have left? No, time. I don't know too. Yeah, that says nothing to me, but it's 7 p.m. Yeah, nice one. So that's something that happened. Okay, let's do it mainly with the rest of that stuff. Yeah, pictures. But like I said, there's always like a lot of people involved in developing techniques, especially there's like scratch pickers. This is DJ Disc actually. Definitely you have to. This is one of the innovators of scratching. Definitely, most people don't know about him. But the good part, really, at least, is he's the DJ of Herbie Hancock nowadays, which follows history at least. As D-Styles is, to be said, one of the best scratchers on the planet, which he really is. He's a longtime partner of DJ Qbert. He's, in my opinion, the more funky one, the more musically one. Shortcut is also a longtime member of the Scratch Pickers, and he was always the beat juggling master, and he's really a master of the steps too. There we have the X-Men. Now comes all the pictures, what I'm talking about already. There's you have Total Eclipse with Citizen Rock Raider and Rob Swift. Rock Raider in action. Rock Raider died a few years ago, rest in peace. It's bad, it wasn't his fault really, but he had an accident. Rob Swift, the really early days of battling, must be like 91 or something like that. That's if you see how the turntables already were in battle mode like we have nowadays, that you have more freedom on the hands. We really had it like in a very old school disco way. Yeah. And Mr. Sinister with the body tricks. Total Eclipse, the album. The Beat Junkies, big innovators. They had like J-Rock on the right. And in the back, there's also Redmatic and Shortcut and Babu and Melody on the left. So Havoc, Mr. Shock. Those guys are holding it down on the West Coast for a long time and still doing it. Babu, for example, is very well known today for being part of Dilated People's rap crew. And Redmatic doing the Beat Junkies record pool, and I think Melody is spinning in Vegas now. This is Babu. Babu is pretty, he won in 97 the ITFs with the beat juggling, scratching, and team, which was pretty awesome at this time. One guy went through, because the ITFs were different than MCs. The ITFs were really technically orientated, were judged by original battle legends instead of some other guys who just sat and judge a panel. That was a time was a big problem at the DMCs. That's how the ITF came up with, that they just putting legends who already won world championships and out of the scene, people in. And Babu was like one of the first, after Total Eclipse 97, in 97 the videos just came, so Babu was one of the first heroes. That's how his legacy still standing. And he put some pretty classic stuff that people are orientating still till today, whether it's scratching or the beat juggling, for example. Redmatic and J-Rock. What else we got? And now we are at Craze. And Craze was for me the last, what's coming really like some new generation. of DJ's craze, and A-Track. A-Track won 97 when he was 15. And A-Track still now, so-called EDM scene, he's like an electronic superstar DJ now. But he's totally coming from the deepest turntables movement ever. He like invented crazy styles. Together with Crazy formed the Allies. Crazy won 3 times the DMCs in a row. So those were the new breed who totally brought the electronics into where we are now with all the buttons and the MIDI controllers, where it's going on from here. So those the guys. Plus, don't forget the scratch poets at some point. Mr. Fing, Prime Cuts, Tony Vegas, and First Rate. There's on the right side Prime Cuts, on the left side Tony Vegas. They were inventing crazy stuff like the Euro scratch and like the crazy noise stuff. Before the controller stuff is still everything what we've done, even at this time, end of 90s, beginning of 2000s. People did stuff with replugging so that you get feedback out of the mixer and made melodies with it and stuff like that. That's inventions from those guys. And that's Mr. Fing. He's still also touring crazy. He's a really like classic scratcher and beat juggler, but yeah, one of the best still around. And that's DJ First Rate and a very old Spuddy Trick movement. So, and that's IDA, that's what happened now out of the ITF. The DMC is still existing, of course. But the IDA is for what you're seeing here today, with all those buttons and the MIDI controllers, controllerism, finger drumming. I think the IDA is the actual perfect match for putting like classic hip-hop DJing turntablism together with the new techniques to put together and showing the world a new approach to handling technique with music in a DJ sense.